Welcome to Beyond Vows Veils, your luxury wedding experience. Our podcast, I feel, is a treasure trove of inspiration and insight for newly engaged couples. Join us as we have captivating stories, expert insight, and real wedding experiences that you can listen and learn from.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond Vows and Veils. Thank you again so much for joining me each week to listen, learn, and discover more ways that you can make more informed decisions on your wedding planning journey. So if you're a couple right now and you're one of the many that are thinking about hosting their wedding in Mexico, then this episode is going to be very much for you. I have a lot of couples right now that are considering a destination wedding draw and are curious about what are the pros and cons to hosting their celebration in Mexico. And so today we're thrilled to have Ateet Ahuja joining us with Indian Destination Weddings. He's an absolute powerhouse in the world of destination weddings, and we've had the pleasure working closely with Ateet and his incredible team on several occasions. Their elevated approach to travel concierge services have made a significant difference in creating unforgettable wedding experiences. With a deep understanding of cultural nuances and a key eye for detail, Ateet assures that every element of a destination wedding is flawlessly executed. In this episode, we're going to dive into all things Mexico, a favorite for many couples considering a destination wedding. So whether it's ensuring your guest travel plans are seamless or curating the perfect blend of local and cultural elements, Ateet and his team bring a unique expertise to the table that truly elevates this experience. So if you're considering a destination wedding, especially in beautiful Mexico, this episode is a must listen. All right. Thank you so much, Ateet, for joining me. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on this podcast.
Absolutely. So, Ateet, give us kind of the bullet point, what you do for a living. What is a travel concierge specialist? For those that are just tuning in,
Right.
tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So at a high level, I started in the wedding industry in 1996. I actually own an entertainment company here locally in the DC metro area. And then decided, hey, let's try to diversify. And I'm already doing their wedding. Let's start doing honeymoons and weddings, things like that. And honestly, I got thrown into it really quick. And started Indian Destination Wedding about 10 years ago now. So what we do is we help find the resorts that couples are looking for. We take their requirements, we take their vision, and really match them to the right resort based on what they're looking for. So vision requirements is really important, budget is really important, and all my couples are super different. So finding them the right resort, negotiating room rates for them, negotiating concessions for them, setting up a travel website, setting up their e-card solution, and really managing all the logistics, kind of taking their headache and stress away from planning a destination wedding, which can seem really overwhelming. I think we both know planning a wedding in general is super hard, but planning a destination wedding can be harder because you can't just drive over and meet all your vendors. Everything's over Zoom, emails, texting. So it's just that same level of comfort is not there. That's really where we bridge that gap. And we can leverage our relationships to really help navigate those areas and make it a little easier and seamless for the customer.
Yeah, definitely. For those that are listening too, we love in our office working with Ateet's team, working with travel concierge companies, simply because when you are doing destination weddings, there's a lot of layers to it, like he just touched on. And so you just don't know what you don't know. And even as your planners, like we don't get involved traditionally and like also the travel logistics that your guests are going to definitely need. They're going to need that concierge level of service. They're going to need to feel comfortable when they're flying their friends and family and what have you into a location. So let's jump in, Ateet, because I know planning and logistics and everything that go into planning. What would you say would be some of the things that couples should take into consideration as like key factors for like selecting a property, or like what are some of the first things you should even think of? Because a lot of times couples are just like, oh, I want to do it in Mexico because it's going to save me money. And I'm like, it's not always the case. Like maybe just kind of walk us through like what are some of the things that maybe couples should have in the back of their minds when they're going to approach someone like yourself for a wedding.
Sure. I think a lot of couples come to me for two main reasons. One is to cut costs. And yes, there is some cost savings by doing a destination wedding. The other one is they want to force, let's be real, with Indian weddings, there's a lot of obligatory invites that come from the parents, right? So they want to lower their guest count. They don't want to have a 500 person wedding. They want to have 1 to 200, maybe 300, right? They want to go a little bit higher, but not as crazy high as you would in the States. Those are some of the two biggest reasons people come to me for doing a destination wedding. Now, what should they be looking for? One, I have all kinds of couples. Their biggest thing is, can we get the same cultural experience, the traditional experience? Can we get the same kind of food? Food is like the biggest thing when it comes to Indian weddings. If the food's not good, in their mind, the wedding wasn't good. It's really sad that that's how we think about it, but that's just how it is. So making sure that they can get traditional food. They want to have a nice backdrop, so they want to have a nice looking beach. They want to have some nice greenery so that the wedding looks pretty. And making sure that all the South Asian vendors that they would typically want here in the US are also available in the States. So they want the Indian caterer, they want Indian decorators, they want Indian henna artists, they want a dole player, and things like that, all kind of wrapped into one so they can easily do the same kind of wedding they would do here in the States.
Yeah, definitely. And just to speak to couples who, again, are on the fence or don't really know a lot about it, approaching a team like Ateet's is where they're able to walk you through the different properties in the area that you're exploring. So let's say you just targeted Mexico, but you're open to, I don't know, Cancun. Maybe you're also open to Cabo or some other locations.
Sure.
Ateet's team can take essentially your credentials and present to you the best properties that are going to be in alignment with those credentials.
Mhm.
So outside spaces, whether or not they have in-house or they permit for exterior catering, what the potential room rates are going to look like for your guests. So that's really, again, such a huge support because your wedding planner, and trust me, I've tried, your wedding planner can go and contact these properties. But I feel like Ateet and his team and a lot of these travel concierge companies out there, they have a different type of relationship, a different in with these venues. So they're able to kind of get information a little bit quicker. And the planner, of course, or our team's able to kind of support, obviously, once you select that property or once you kind of narrowed things down or you're going for site visits. So it's a team approach and effort. But I just want to say, obviously that initial outline is so pivotal because it kind of shares ultimately what direction you're ultimately going to take this event.
Right. 100%. I agree with you.
And so I think one of the things that I get a lot of questions from couples is all inclusive. And what I'm learning as someone who has started planning weddings in Mexico is all inclusive is not the same as true all inclusive. And then there's European plan. So T, can you high level for me? Because when I hear the word all inclusive, I think it's one price and it's all inclusive. Maybe share a little bit of those nuances just for couples starting that journey.
Sure. So let's start at the top, all inclusive. So a true all inclusive. What does that mean? A resort that is completely all inclusive. They don't have an EP plan, EP being European plan. That's all they do is all inclusive. And a true all inclusive model is where when you pay the price for, I don't want to say a room rate, but when you're paying to go to the resort, that price that you're paying, the room rate price includes all the food you want to eat or drink or not drink at their restaurants, at their bars, and 24-hour food, room service. That's a true all inclusive. When you go to a true all inclusive, the cost to the host, the couple, is going to be heavily subsidized, or at least in terms of food and F&B costs, right? Those are going to either be heavily subsidized or possibly waived, depending on the resort you select. So that is the way to go if you're trying to do a cost savings. That doesn't mean a lot of couples will say, "Oh, my wedding will be cheaper in Mexico because the labor is cheaper." No, imagine your wedding in the U.S. Flowers are the same, decor is the same, DJ sound and lighting is the same. It's just that your food costs go down. That's really how you have the cost savings. Then we have the next tier, which is kind of like a nuance. You have an EP resort that has both an EP plan as well as an all-inclusive plan. So they're not truly an all-inclusive. Room service is not free and it is not included. They're not doing a full all-inclusive where you have access to every restaurant, every bar. It's more like a meal plan. So that's not going to be as cost-effective as a true all-inclusive, but it's still going to be more cost-effective than an EP resort. And an EP resort, European plan, is going to be like a normal resort. It's like the Marriott down the street. You're going to pay per person for food, for catering, F&B minimums, the bar cost. You're going to get taxes. You're going to get service fees added on. So it's kind of like doing a wedding here in the States, but in Mexico or Jamaica or DR. So EP is probably the most expensive way you can go. I would tell you that only about I would say 5% of my couples do EP weddings. And that's only because they truly feel that that's their vibe. Like, that is totally okay. That can be your vibe, but it is not a reason to choose an EP is not because, oh, my guests don't drink. Guess what? When you go to an EP resort, a non-alcoholic drink is anywhere between $8 and $15, and a bottle of water can be between $10 and $20. So you're not saving money by going to an EP resort, but if it's your vibe, it's what you're looking for, then definitely do it.
Yeah, for sure. And, curious back to the all inclusive,
Mhm.
a lot of times, is it true to say that essentially a lot more of the cost is kind of fronted to the attendees, right? Because they're kind of paying this per person price, and that per person price kind of takes care of not only their all inclusive during their leisure time, but also for like the private events that the couples would otherwise be hosting. Is that good to say, or how would you
I
frame?
personally don't like that analogy. However, I do see how it comes into how it is manifested and it is perceived, right? A lot of couples will think that the reality is whether you're doing a wedding at that resort or not,
Mhm.
that person, that guest, if they want to go to vacation at that resort, they're still paying that same price.
Right,
So
right.
that's my mindset is, hey, whether you have your wedding there or not, that guest, if they want to go there, they're paying that same price. It's not like they're paying extra.
Mhm.
But yes, when a guest is going to an all inclusive, it includes food and drink. And that is how that resort is able to subsidize and lower the cost to the host because every guest there has 24-hour access to food and drink.
Right. Right, exactly. And so I'm with you, Ateet, because if you're planning a personal family vacation,
Yeah.
you obviously would budget in for lodging. Traditionally, you would budget in for food and beverage or activities or things like that. So by the time that you sort of add that up, it usually is in alignment with what you would have already spent. So let's say the couple decided to go with a European plan resort where they're paying a la carte per person pricing similar that they would here. The host experience really is the same. The cost experience for the attendees, it depending on how you chuck it down, could also be essentially the same.
Yeah.
But some of the couples that I've also worked with can also agree to like say, oh, if it's, I don't know, X amount per person per night, but they want to support that cost, they also can support in subsidizing that cost to get that down for the attendees. So
Yeah.
that's also an option for families who have those budgets to throw some money at the per person per night room rate to make it a little bit more palatable for the attendees as well.
100%. Yeah, I would say about 70% of my couples subsidize room rates because
Okay.
they want to feel like they're providing, right? When you're doing a wedding, like let's say you're doing an Indian wedding here in the States, a
Hmm.
lot of parents, the couple's parents, will pay for everyone's rooms. They
Yeah.
don't want to pay for, they'll pay for all the events. They'll pay for a tea room and a snack room. So whenever you want to go, it's like a hospitality room. Like you can go there.
Right.
So the same way, they've already budgeted for it. So again, 70% of my couples will subsidize a portion of the room cost.
Yeah, definitely. So something for, couples to keep in mind, because I know there's a lot of like conversation on, oh, is it going to be too expensive for our guests and things like that. I think you have to put things into perspective on what your guests usually would budget for a wedding here in the States for their family, as opposed to a wedding in Mexico. And certainly those are things that you can kind of discuss internally. So when it comes to all-inclusive properties, Ati, just curious, and I know I've done a few obviously with your team, which have been incredible.
100%.
How would you say, like, what are the customization options at an all-inclusive resort? Because obviously our couples, they love the bang for the buck. They love that they're able to maybe invite a little less people and have this great destination location. Is the customization, do you feel like it's still there? Like, are they able to like fully custom menus? Do they have to work within certain parameters? Like, how would you say that usually is structured?
No, I think they can. A lot of my couples have done a lot of customization. They've done, custom drinks where they have like a bride drink and a groom drink. They've done custom menus. There's no issue there.
Hmm.
They've done custom signage all over the resort and on the LED screens. That's there. I think the only thing that sometimes hinders it is outdoor events, right? Outdoor events have curfews. So maybe you can't party as long as you want if you're outdoors, but that's because you have to be mindful of the other guests that are staying at the property.
Hmm.
Unless you're doing a buyout, then of course, no rules. But no, I haven't had any couples that feel limitations on what they can and can't customize. Now,
Yeah.
I think the only thing would be vendors. I think a lot of couples want to bring in their own vendors. I would say 90% of my couples bring their own DJ because they want an Indian DJ in destination or playing for their events. None of these destinations have an Indian DJ, so that's one thing you're going to bring in. A lot of couples will bring in their own photo video because that's a very personal decision. The one thing I think you and I have discussed many times on our other weddings as well is there are 3 vendors that you have to use when it comes to an all-inclusive resort due to licenses and insurances and liabilities, and that's going to be flowers, decor, and production. So those 3 things, while you still customize what you want, you're not allowed to bring those 3 vendors in-house.
Right.
On the outside.
Right.
You've got to use those 3. But no, I've never seen a limitation on customization.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's my experience as well. And keep in mind, like, obviously, if you have a package with a venue and the all inclusive is, I don't know, 2 appetizers and
Right.
3 entrees, and then you decide you want 6 appetizers and 5 entrees, obviously, there's going to be a cost increase to that. So
Right.
just keep in mind that it's not that things can't be customized or met to your expectations. It's more or less that everything's relative to cost as it would be anywhere else for that matter.
100%.
And I think Ateet, speaking to the vendor fee, which I think is an important thing for couples to consider when they're hosting their events in Mexico. Guys, look at your vendors that you're looking at hosting, and maybe talk to some of professionals like Ateet, talk to the venues in terms of what their preferred vendors looks like. Obviously, it will certainly help to save on cost to work with some of the local pros, but I'm with you. I totally understand if you want to like fly in a DJ because you obviously want some more authentic Indian music, which, by the way, for any DJs right now that want to like go post up in Cancun and like set up shop, they probably would make
They would kill it. They would kill it.
Like a really good DJs that just like, I'm gonna live in Mexico. Like,
Yeah.
they would
One
kill
of
it.
my DJs actually has thought about that, and
Oh my
they're
God.
like, and she's a part of my team. Like, she works for me.
Oh, really? So you're like, don't go.
And she would no, but if she posts up there, I would literally be able to just recommend her to
Oh
every
yeah,
single friend.
true.
So that would be crazy because if an
Yeah.
Indian DJ moves there, they would kill it. I mean, think about this. There's only one South Asian priest in all of Cancun.
Oh, really?
One.
I did not
So if you
know
think about it, he's monopolizing. He's killing it. I mean,
Yeah.
people do fly on their own sometimes, but if you want to
Yeah.
use local, he's
Yeah.
the only game in town.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I love that. So any of our lovely vendors, South Asian vendors that are just wanting to live their best lives out in Mexico,
Yeah.
there's more.
I'll get
No,
you
but
that through.
it's true. And, for clients or couples who are listening, you do have to pay what we call, I think it's an outside vendor fee. And so you can bring in, again, your own vendors that are maybe not on that list, with exception of the ones that Teets mentioned, like the decor. There are some stipulations there. And again, these aren't decorators that don't know what they're doing. You're going to have a great experience. Certainly, they're able to accomplish probably what you're looking for. But keep in mind when you're paying those offsite vendor fees, sometimes those will get waived at Teet depending on like how many nights that vendor's staying at the property. Sometimes that kind of balances out, right?
It does. About 90, we've been able to negotiate that for about 90% of our resorts that we work with, where as long as your outside vendor stays on property within your room block contract for at least 3 nights or more, they will waive the fee. There are some resorts that have said we can't waive it, but we'll reduce it by 50%. And then there's a few handful of resorts that said, no, we can't, reduce it. We can't waive it. Honestly, I think it's part of a CYA, right? Because I think if your outside vendor that they don't know, that they have not vetted, they being the resort, creates some kind of damage on the property, that vendor fee is really there to protect the resort. So I think that's why it's there. But again, 90% of our resorts have agreed to waive it as long as you stay on property.
Sure. And keep in mind for, couples that are going to be hiring vendors, usually you're going to get some vendor accommodations even in the States regardless, right? Because these vendors are working like long hours. They might have early starts. And so these vendor rooms are going to be something that you would have budgeted for even if you got in the States. So like Ateet's mentioning, depending on the property, maybe that's kind of a null and void cost as well, because you're just back to square one of paying for that rate. Now the rate might be a little higher for all inclusive, but then again, you're not having to like, do separate like meals every day for your vendors, things like that. All those kind of things are going to be otherwise taken care of. So that's really helpful. And then outside of that, Ateet, in terms of, couples that are planning in Mexico, is there any like particular locations in Mexico that you like or some of your favorites, or can you not say because you work with all?
Well, I can say, I won't say resorts. I'll tell you areas.
Sure.
Because I think I like all resorts. I don't have, one thing about our company is we're agnostic. Like, we don't sway anybody one way or the other. We want to listen to what their requirements are and then match them with the right resort. We do enough volume with a bunch of different brands that it's okay. Like, we don't have to just be only this or only that.
Sure.
And we don't just do Mexico. We've done weddings in Jamaica, DR, Costa Rica, Aruba. Um, we've done literally almost every destination in the Caribbean. I think Mexico is just really common and really not common, really commercialized, and because of that reason, a lot of people go there because that's really where everything started. So there's a lot more vendors to choose from. So I think Cancun's really big, but I think people are now going away from that and going to Playa Mujeres, which is about 45 minutes north. They're going to Riviera Maya. They're going to Playa del Carmen. They're going to Tulum. But now we're seeing a really big uptick, and they're saying, you know what? I don't want to do Cancun. I don't want to do the East Coast. And I'm seeing an uptick towards Cabo and Puerto Vallarta, which is on the West Coast. So we're getting a lot of requests for that. And then I have some clients saying, we don't want Mexico at all because everyone's doing Mexico. So we'll do a lot of Jamaica and DR as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just depends. I think every couple is so different. I will say that still the majority of my business is Mexico, but we do a fair bit with the other destinations as well.
Okay. And, as far as like the travel logistics, that's one thing that I'm so grateful that your team does, because Lord help us on the travel logistics, getting everybody where they need to go. So so make sure I'm saying this correctly. So a couple decides that they want to move forward with a resort. Obviously they're working with your team. Let's say they're also working with a planner, and now it's time to send out save the dates or announcements about where the wedding's going to take place. Maybe you've got your rooming block link sort of ready to go. Ateet, talk to us about like what your team puts together and how that streamlines the guest experience in terms of their pickups at the airport and some of those logistics that maybe some of the couples aren't aware of.
Sure. So the very first thing we'll talk about is the website. We create a travel website for all of our couples. Now, it's not a wedding website. A wedding website is where couples have their pictures, how they met, how they proposed, their story. You can still do that if you want, and then have a travel link on like a travel page on your wedding page, which then goes to our travel site. Our travel site is customized for each of our couples, and it's really just there to provide the travel information. So it tells all the guests where the wedding is, when the wedding is, what the room categories are, what the contracted or special group rates are, and it also has a booking engine on that site so that they can go in, get all the information, and book their room. Now, once that comes in, our team will take care of it, and we'll start booking the room, send them confirmations, and process all the back end stuff so that the couple gets credit for the room and the guests are taken care of. Now, once we make that website and before the bookings happen, we also give access to all of our couples to an e-card solution. So they can send out save the dates. They can send out a wedding card. And the best part is with Destination Wedding, people are getting away from paper. They're really going the electronic route because it's just easier, faster, and it kind of goes with the theme of a destination wedding. So we also want to make sure we have a CTA. We have a call to action on every card. So when the card goes out, we let the couples customize it any way they want. It's a license that we purchase. So then my couples get complimentary access to that software. They build it any way they want. We send it out from our admin package. But when we send it out, it looks like a couple sent it. And then when they open the card, they'll get some basic info, and then the card will be clickable, which will then either take them to their wedding website or the travel website. So it makes it just kind of makes it seamless, right? From the card to the wedding website to booking the room. And then we do have parameters set up as we get closer to the wedding, we will start sending out automated emails of gathering flight information. We will create the manifest. We will make sure that we have everything correct for the transfer company. We'll be monitoring flights in case you're delayed. So the transfer company is there. Once you arrive in destination, whatever destination it is, there's a welcome sign there. It has the couple's name, the couple's pictures. So it's very easy to find them. It's really easy to not be overwhelmed with a million people at the airport. Like, what do I do? No, there's a welcome sign. There's the wedding name. There's the wedding couple. Go to that person. They'll put you on a vehicle and you go straight to the resort.
Right.
Same thing with on the way back. We handle all the logistics for return transfers as well. So anything related to rooms or airport transfers or even airfare. We are a licensed travel agency. So if you need help with airfare, we can help with that as well. Yeah. And the best part is we have a 24-hour contact number. So while you're in travel. So if you're in travel and you need help, if you're in business hours, call us directly. If you're not, call the 1-800 number, which is our 24-hour number, and there'll be someone there to help you at every time.
Yeah, definitely. Ateet, I was actually really impressed when I found out about like all of the certifications that you have. It's like it's pretty fast. Do you have to keep on track of? Are you constantly like visiting these properties and like getting different certifications? Because obviously you have to be so knowledgeable about these venues and the pros and cons. And like, I just sometimes, even when I'm on calls with you with clients, I'm like, how the heck you even remember like oh, this one has this event lawn and this one doesn't have this. And
Yeah,
like, is it just from obviously working at these venues forever, or are you just constantly traveling to these
it's
locations?
both. It's both. I think so. I think you know this. I've been to over 250 resorts myself,
I don't think I
which
knew
means
that.
I've slept in their bed, eaten their food, drank their drink. So it's not like
Yeah,
I'm just like visiting.
right.
Not only do I are we required to renew our certificates, basically to keep our certificates, we have to renew every I think somewhere 1 year, somewhere every 2 years. We have to
Hmm.
renew those. But I travel about 3 times a month internationally to these destinations. So I'm in Mexico, Jamaica, DR, Costa Rica, all the Mexico Caribbean.
Hmm.
Outside of personal travels, I'm in these places 3 to 4 times a month where I'm checking out new properties that have not opened for the general public yet, checking
Wow.
out renovations that are happening, checking out what the hotel closures are, what the experience is. Has the experience changed at the airport?
Hmm.
Is there any kind of construction going on in the roads? Because
Hmm.
that will also hinder how long it takes to get to the resort. And some couples are very much, I only want to be 30 minutes from the airport. And then I also will check the food. As I
Hmm.
said, Indian food is super important to my couples. So I will check and consistently go to the Indian restaurants or meet with the Indian chef and try their food again to make sure it's still at the consistent level that I want it to be at.
Yeah.
Because if it's not meeting my requirements, there's no way I'm going to be suggesting that resort to my clients.
Right.
That would be doing my clients a disservice.
Right.
Yes,
Right. Of
traveling
course.
all the time.
Yeah, that's so wild because I definitely feel like, again, that's where you bring such a level that, certainly even as planners, we can't, right? I mean, I'm definitely not on a flight all the time going and
Mhm.
visiting these properties and trying their food and everything else. And so it's incredibly helpful to have somebody who has feet on the ground and who understands, like, oh, there's been some turnover at this property. Here's some
Yeah,
things that you may experience. Here's what another couple of mine ran into because, ultimately the resorts are always changing, especially since the pandemic. Like things are just so different now, especially in the hospitality industry.
yeah.
Both pros and cons in there. And so I think having someone like yourself as a team player in the whole planning process is really supportive. um Ati, is there anything in particular, like just parting words of advice for couples, like anything that you just feel like, if they, you don't know what you don't know, anything that you would support for them potentially planning a destination wedding?
So one, plan early. I think I've seen a lot of couples recently saying my wedding is like less than 6 months away. Now,
Mhm.
while that might be possible here in the U.S., that's not my thing. I don't do U.S. weddings. That's something you could probably answer to. But with the demand after COVID, the demand for destination weddings has gone up significantly. Where we can do the wedding, I've got plenty of staff. The problem is not with our agency. The problem is with the availability of the resorts. So I always tell my couples start as soon as possible. The sweet spot is 18 to 24 months out, but even if you can get 12 to 18 months of lead time before your actual wedding date, that's going to help you significantly. And it's going to help you in the fact that you will have more options. I'll have more options to show you. If you come to me saying your wedding's in 9 months or 6 months, I can still help you, but you may only have 3 resorts to look at. And
Right.
that may not be good enough for my couples.
Right.
Second, have a budget in mind. Um, a lot of my couples will say, my budget's, oh, I saw don't believe anything you see online. They see a wedding package online, which is accurate, for like 20K. And they'll say, oh, my budget for 200 people is 20K. I'm like, that's not possible. And they're like, but we saw a package online. Well, yeah, you did. But if you read the fine print, that doesn't include any of your vendors. That's
Right.
just event space, staff, and food. Like,
Right.
make sure you have a full budget for every single vendor for every event of your wedding. And then if you have the ability, or if you have a planner like yourself, have them break it down to you. Like break it down out of your 200K budget. I don't know, 40K is decor and 20K is flowers. I don't know the numbers, but
Sure.
that's more for my planners to do. I
Right.
don't get involved in that, but that's what I would say. Hey, start early, have a
Mhm.
budget in mind, and know at least the high level of what you're looking for, and
Mhm.
we'll be able to help you. And if you don't know what you're looking for, it's fine. It's my job to ask you really specific, targeted questions to get you starting to think about what you should be thinking about, and then that way you'd be like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. I need that, or I want that,
Right.
and we'll be able to find something for you.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate it, Ati. It has been so helpful to chat with you and
Oh, my pleasure.
understand a little high level. Guys, this is just like the tip of the iceberg. There's so much that goes into contracting and finding the right property and making sure it's the
Yeah.
right fit and the vendors. So, again, if you're doing a destination wedding, especially if you're planning something for the first time for you and your family, like definitely having a travel concierge company involved is going to really, really help you to fine tune that out. So thank you, Ateet, for your
Oh,
time.
my
Really appreciate
pleasure.
it.
It's always a pleasure.